Hey folks, this is going to be another one in our retirement planning series. And this video, what we're going to look at today is retirement planning. Let me call it something else. Retirement savings vehicles. And they literally are just like a vehicle. They're going to be the carriage that moves your money through time into retirement. These can be things like traditional IRA, Roth IRA, 401k, 403b, things like that. They all have different characteristics, just like different vehicles have characteristics. So, as we've talked about in our retirement planning series, people will typically set a goal. Their goal is at some point in the future, this is time, at some point in the future, whatever age this is, say 65, I'm going to go into retirement. And so what I need is some vehicle that will allow me to save a certain amount of money each year and get a certain rate of return that gets me to right here, this goal that I need, that I can then spend it out over the next 30 years of my life until the day that I'm passed away. So this is what our goal looks like, and that I did a video on the conceptual overview of retirement, so you may want to go back and review that video. But the point of today's video is different vehicles may or may not be able to get you to the point that you want to go. So you want to be able to look at what's my goal, but then what vehicle am I going to take to get there? Let me get rid of this. One of the best ways to think about this is simply just like a normal vehicle. So let us say, for instance, that you and your family have a goal. Okay, so here's your family. And the goal is we want to go to Hawaii. So we now go over here and we say, well, what choice of vehicle do we have to get us to this particular goal? And I think it would be obvious to anybody you have a couple choices. You can take an airplane, or you can take a boat. But what you know you can't do is take a car or a train, because you have to go over the Pacific Ocean. So clearly, if we look at our goal and we say, okay, that's our goal, then I need a certain vehicle that's going to get me to that goal. If my goal was to drive from LA to New York City, then, well, I've got more options. I can also take an airplane. That might be the most efficient for you. You could take a car. You can take a bus. You can take a train. Each one has their own characteristics. So the airplane is going to be the fastest, and you don't have to do anything but sit in the back. The car is going to take probably the longest, maybe not as long as the bus, but you got a car, but you have to drive it. The bus might take longer than the car, but you don't have to do anything. And the train, who knows, I'm not sure what trains are running these days, but at least in the train you have a sleeping compartment, you have a restaurant, you can get up and walk around, where the car and the bus you really can't. So, okay, this is the vehicles that you choose to take are going to determine what characteristics are along the way. Okay, so what we want to do is take the normal vehicle that we're used to, compare it to retirement savings vehicle. Okay, let me go ahead and close this one out. So what are our options? Savings vehicles. Well, I think some of the first ones that people might come up with is something like an IRA. So individual retirement account. And then you have an option sub of that to choose a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. Many people are familiar with if their company has a 401k, or if you're a teacher or you work for a nonprofit, you have a 403b. If you're in the government or you work for the military, you have the Thrift Savings Plan or the TSP. Some local governments have something called the 457 plan. You could also just use a regular account. What I mean by a regular account is it doesn't get a label from the IRS to give you tax advantages. So you would either put it in your own name, like an individual name. It could be in a joint, like with your spouse. It could be labeled as your trust. But essentially, what the IRS does when they come up with these labels is it determines how you're going to be taxed. Now, we have a whole other video on that. The taxation of the different types of retirement accounts. So make sure you check out that video. But each one of these has some kind of characteristic or some kind of rules around them. The number one is how much can I contribute? So I don't care if you make $1 million in revenue, the 401k world is going to say you can only contribute $17,000 or $17,500, I think it is right now. That's it. It doesn't matter. We're going to limit you on the amount of money that you can defer. This is the same. This is the same. Here, you're going to be limited by $5,500, or if you happen to be older than age 50, you could put $6,500. So this is what I mean when I said earlier, if you have a bar set that you need to spend a certain amount of money, let's go back here. I'm going to turn this one back on. Oh, didn't put that there. Let's close that. Okay. If you have a certain bar set and you go, look, I'm going to choose to use a Roth IRA, I can put this much in per year. Well, you might mathematically figure that out and realize that dollar amount per year isn't going to get me to where I want to go, to my goal. But if I have access to a 401k, I can put more money in. Okay, if I have access to a 403b, TSP, or I'd have to go down here and open up one of these accounts, which is going to be taxed a little bit differently, so it might not be the most efficient vehicle to get me to retirement. Okay? So the rules are, they always tell you how much can you contribute, and each one has a different contribution amount. It tells us how the money is taxed. Okay? And then finally, it's going to tell us there are going to be limits on what we can invest in. For instance, one that comes, the two that come to mind, gold and real estate. Oftentimes people say, I want to use my retirement accounts for gold or real estate. Well, there are specific limitations on both of those that you have to be aware of before putting them into some kind of IRA. But either way, you have some kind of limits on investments. For example, if you have a 401k, your limits are typically based on what your company decides. Unless they have the type of account where you can go in and make your own decisions. But so the company will give you a list. Here are the funds that you can participate in. Now let's do one more thing because I want to draw you a picture on this. Let's say we're going to create a bucket. Okay, this is the vehicle that our money is going to drop into. So we have this cash. and we're going to drop it into this to use for investing. So the first thing that we want to look at is what kind of label or what kind of vehicle is it? Okay, this determines what we call the outside, the container. And this is all determined by the IRS and the Congress. So the Congress passes legislation in 1974 that creates something called an IRA. It's the IRS. If you want to learn about an IRA, you got to go here to figure out how much can I contribute and how is it taxed, because that's what we're looking at. The bucket that you put it in, the container, and the label comes from the IRS. 1980 comes around, and they passed legislation, oddly enough, it was almost like a mistake, that created what we know today as a 401k. Think about that. We're hinging our retirement future on literally something that was a mistake. No one intentionally set out to say, let's create something that people can put tax-deferred income into through their paycheck and save. This was something that's for a whole nother topic, but just realize that it wasn't exactly something that was planned on. Okay, so the label names what it is. 401k, TSP, 403b, Roth IRA, traditional IRA. Okay? What it doesn't do is tell you how you're going to invest. So back when I was doing the radio program, I would get regular questions that would say something to the effect of, how much can I expect to return on a Roth IRA? Well, I understand what they're trying to get at, but they're missing the point that the Roth IRA is just the label to the container. Then you can do things like, I'm just going to invest in cash, or I'm going to invest in bonds, or I'm going to invest in stocks, or I'm going to invest in a real estate investment trust, or I'm going to invest in a commodity. These internal, once the money's in the bucket, these determine your rate of return. Okay, so the couple things we covered today are, when we go to set out our goal, we need to determine what the vehicle is. The vehicle comes from the IRS through the Congress. Is it a 401k? Is it a thrift savings plan? Is it a 403b, Roth IRA, traditional IRA? That creates the container for us to put it in, and what that tells us is, how is the money taxed? Once it goes in, well, it's how the money's taxed, how much can I contribute, and then there are some limitations on what you can invest in. Once it's in there, now you choose your investment based on your time frame, your risk tolerance, and what kind of rate of return you expect or what kind of rate of return you need. So that wraps up our retirement savings vehicles. Be sure to check out how the taxation works on each of these, because we have a whole separate video on that. Okay, we'll see you next time on the video.